state, you may call your next witness.
State positive. Detective. General.
All right.
Yes, sir. Detective J. Thorpe Jr., Thorpe. Jim.
Good morning, Detective Thorpe.
Good morning, ma'am.
How are you?
Fine.
Good. Detective Thorpe, would you please introduce yourself to the jury by telling them where it is you currently work?
Yes, ma'am. Detective Jim Thorpe Jr., City of Atlanta.
Hang on just a second, you're gonna have to use the mic. Can you hear the witness? All right.
All right, if everyone can hear me and can stand and static, I want to use this
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you. Would you, go ahead, I apologize. Tell the jury where it is that you currently work.
Yes, ma'am. I currently work City of Atlanta Police Department Homicide Unit.
How long have you worked at the City of Atlanta Police Department in the homicide?
I work with the City of Atlanta now for 30 years and 9 months.
All right. Have you worked as a homicide detective the entire time?
Yes, ma'am, 20 years.
Now, 30 years and 9 months and 20 years are different. So what did you do when you first started working with the police department?
My first assignment,
Can I hear you if you don't use the mic? And I'm sorry that it's staticky. Maybe one day we could get that fixed also, but we're just gonna have to endure the static.
Yes, Your Honor. Try to minimize it. What did you do when you first started working with the Atlanta Police Department?
yes, ma'am. The first assignment was the Atlanta Police Zone 3 Precinct Evening Watch Mobile Patrol.
That would have been in what year that you started that?
I started Mobile Patrol in 95.
What types of activities did you conduct as a Zone 3 Evening Watch Mobile Patrol officer?
Answering 911 calls, dealing with all types of calls of accidents, suspicious persons, shootings, robberies, burglaries, car thefts.
Okay. There we go.
Yes, ma'am.
And tell the jury what parts of Zone 3 you patrolled as a patrolman in Zone 3 Evening Watch.
Then the beat I was assigned was called 304, and that beat was mostly around Metropolitan Parkway, Sylvan Road, leading up to Cleveland Avenue and Lakewood Avenue.
How much of Cleveland Avenue did you patrol?
It would depend on if we were short an officer. They would reposition my team. There was 2 officers assigned to the beat 304. So either one of us could get pulled and use around Cleveland Avenue. That was the 308 beat. And we could pretty much control all of Cleveland, 75, 85, north and south, Jonesboro Road, and all the streets surrounding Old Hayville and streets like that.
Okay. As a homicide detective, are you restricted to one zone only, or do you work the entire city of Atlanta?
We work the entire city of Atlanta.
Are you familiar with the neighborhood surrounding Cleveland Avenue and including Cleveland Avenue today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the jury whether it's different, the same, or in some ways both to 95 as between today and then?
Uh,
Sustained.
All right. How do you describe the neighborhood of Cleveland Avenue back in 1995? How would you describe it in terms of the community?
Community, like a better terminology, wasn't aggressive. That part of the Cleveland Avenue really was not a high crime area or gang activity respondent back in 95 to 97.
And that was the length of time that you worked evening patrol, 95 to 97?
Yes, ma'am.
And typically, what types of crimes did you have the most opportunity to respond to in that area?
Yes, Your Honor. Relevance.
Overruled.
Mostly shootings, like I said, robberies, burglaries, things of that nature.
Would you describe for the jury your, you mentioned there was not a lot of particular kind of activity. Did that change? Has that changed today?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a particular kind of crime that you see more of today that you did not see back in 95?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell the jury what types those are?
Mostly gang activity, shootings, related shootings.
Now, after you left Evening Watch Patrol of Zone 3, what station did you take up at APD?
Yes, ma'am. I was transferred to the Red Dog unit, evening watch and day watch.
How long did you work the Red Dog unit?
About 3 or 4 years.
Now, after the Red Dog unit, what was your assignment?
I was promoted from the Red Dog unit to detective, and my first assignment was the burglary unit.
And what year was that?
2000. 2000, yes, ma'am.
Prior to joining the Atlanta Police Department, would you tell the jury what your education was?
Yes, ma'am. Graduated high school on time, associate's degree, and at that time I went into the military, U.S. Army.
How long did you serve in the Army?
Roughly about 6 years.
And what was your station? What was your job in the Army? Without getting into too much detail, just generally speaking.
Soldier.
Okay. Are you originally from Atlanta?
No, ma'am.
Did you come to Atlanta after you left the Army?
No, ma'am. I was here.
After you joined the burglary unit, tell the jury what your responsibilities included.
Investigating burglaries, whether it was commercial or residential burglaries.
Was there a particular area of Atlanta you were responsible for?
Yes, ma'am. My primary zone was a zone 1, and my secondary was zone 3.
What area of Zone 1 were you responsible for? I'm sorry about that static.
That's fine. We believe if anyone's familiar with the Bluff area, Donnelly, Hollowell, Hollywood Road, everything over in that generally Perry Boulevard.
Hang on 1 second, I'm trying to start this part.
That's pretty constant.
Sorry about that. And how long did you serve in the burglary unit?
2 years.
After the burglary unit, what did you do?
I was transferred to the robbery unit.
Is that me, Judge, or is that?
I have no idea.
All right, what was your position with the robbery unit?
Detective, and my primary zone was zone 3. Secondary zone was zone 1.
Were you patrolling the same or responsible for the same area in the robbery unit as you had been when you were in a Zone 3 evening watch patrol officer?
Yes, ma'am. So I had the whole entire zone. Yes, the whole entire zone, A sector and B sector.
Did you interact often with the residents of Zone 3
Yes.
during your time as a patrol officer and as a detective in the robbery unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Was your interaction only when you were arresting people or investigating suspects?
No, ma'am.
What other types of interactions did you have?
At that time, I was also working part-time as an Atlanta Public School resource officer. And the school I was assigned was the Crawford Long Middle School, which is right off of Cleveland Avenue.
Would you tell the jury what years those were that you worked as a Crawford Long Middle School resource officer?
I would say it'd be from 2001 to 2012, 2013.
And what were your responsibilities as a resource officer with Crawford Long?
Primarily, maintaining the safety and security of the school, walking around, patrolling the grounds, make sure teachers' cars or anyone visiting school wasn't cars were getting broken in, things of that nature.
Did you have interaction with the students outside of investigating car break-ins and the like?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you describe for the jury what types of interactions that you have with the students at Crawford Long Middle School? Your Honor, as it pertains to particular people that are involved in this case, his knowledge of them and the jury's awareness of his foundation.
His attention to that.
Did you interact with the course indulgence? I'd just like to ask a broader question and narrow it down. I won't prolong that. Did you interact with the students and converse with them on a personal level?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you interact with the students' parents at times?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you interact with a student by the name of Quindarius Zachary?
Yes, ma'am.
Describe your, when you first met Quindarius Zachary, how old was he?
I say he'd be about 11 years old.
And in what capacity did you interact with him? Was it?
Usually times when he was misbehaving, and I would just take him to the side and talk to him rather than seeing him being suspended or suffering school punishment. I'd try and talk the kids to the side, get him out of trouble, and once again put him back into the classroom.
What year was that you got to meet Quindarius Zachary?
Cannot recall right offhand, about around 2010 maybe.
Did you establish any level of trust with the students? Would they come to you and talk with you about things that they were encountering?
Yes, ma'am.
As students?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say you talked to them, did you talk with them only about scholastic things, or did you talk with them about things like getting involved with groups that they shouldn't get involved with?
Yes, ma'am. All of the above. Yes, ma'am.
Back then in 2010, did you see any signs of what you believe to be the formation of gang activity within Crawford Long?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what was it that you saw that led you to believe that?
The kids was constantly discussing the gang that was starting to sprout. They was calling themselves the Red Cartel.
No, I heard you, and it looks like Mr. Sharps also forgot to say
Same
something.
objection.
Thing. Overruled.
You may continue.
Yes, they would say something about a gang sprouting up called the Red Cartel.
You may continue.
Okay. They call themselves the Red Cartel, and they were becoming very prominent over in the Cleveland, Springdale, Cleveland Avenue area, Old Hateville area, Macon Drive area.
Apart from hearing the name Red Cartel, did you see any indicators or signs of the ways that people calling themselves Red Cartel identify themselves?
They mostly wear the color red.
Did you ever see them, without specifically showing any gang signs, did you ever see them display any signals that were seemingly unique to members of the group itself?
No,
I'm gonna object to this.
on some of the residents, or you go inside the building and see if they have a camera that may be facing out. We walk around and we try and see if there's cameras fixated on the structures, or you go inside and see if there's door ring cameras on some of the residents, or you go inside the business and see if they have a camera that may be facing out their front windows.
As the lead detective, do you delegate responsibilities in the investigation of the homicides that you're responsible for, or do you handle every aspect of that investigation?
We delegate.
What types of activities do you delegate to other persons?
Depending how many homicide detectives on the scene, I have them do what is called a neighborhood canvas. They automatically go around, start knocking and talking to people, and also looking for surveillance cameras, things of that nature.
And do you work with the VIC unit to determine whether or not do you ever work with the VIC unit?
Beverly.
Yes,
And how long have you worked with the VIC unit?
since their first inception and for coming into work with the APD, we usually call down and ask them, do they have any big cameras in the immediate area? And they're able to tell us they have cameras at this location, either facing north, east, south, or west. At that time, we give them the time frame of the incident, and they're able to go back and take a look and see exactly if they have any footage of anything that may be relevant to our homicide investigation.
Has the number of VIC cameras remained constant over the time that you've worked as a homicide detective?
No, ma'am.
Would you explain how they've not remained constant? Have they increased, decreased?
They're increased because of the success of the video integration camera systems.
Because of the what now?
Video integration camera system that is increased because of their reliability.
Okay. Would you explain to the jury whether license plate readers and VIC cameras are the same or different?
They're different. The license plate reader picks up on the tag of a vehicle, stores it in, and they will tell you exactly what direction that vehicle has been traveling, what other LPR readers it has hit on, so you can go back and backtrack to see exactly where that vehicle may have started or came from.
Is there any particular information you need to be able to track a vehicle with license plate readers?
Sometimes we're able to give a make and model and description of the vehicle. And once again, the LPR teams are able to go in and say, okay, we found this vehicle that looks like the vehicle you're talking about. We see that the license plate reader is showing that it was in the immediate area at the time of the incident.
Now, have license plate readers always been in effect within the city of Atlanta during your time?
No, ma'am.
And do you know or remember when you all first would have had access to license plate readers?
I want to say probably around maybe 2018, 2019.
Has the number of license plate readers since that time that you're familiar with remained constant, increased, decreased, or something in the middle?
Increased.
And how do you know how it's determined where a license plate reader will be placed?
No, I tend to think that it's based on the high activity, traffic, or whatever in that particular area, and also crimes that may occur in that area.
And does the Atlanta Police Department decide where license plate readers will be placed?
I believe it's decided by City Hall and Police Department talking together.
And what about video integration unit cameras, VIC cameras? Who decides where those will be placed?
Same thing, I think it's a joint collaboration between City Hall and the Atlanta Police Department.
Do you obtain knowledge about whether license plate readers caught any particular information in the same way or different than you get information about VIC cameras? Or to ask the better question, how do you learn whether or not there are license plate readers that may have captured something you need in your investigation?
Once again, we'll call and see.
Sustained.
Your Honor, how do you know where the license plate readers are that might have captured something of interest in your investigation?
We call the unit and they'll tell us if they have a license plate reader in the immediate area, and they'll tell us exactly where it's positioned and what direction it's facing.
Would you describe for the jury where the Summer Hill community is located?
It's a corner off of around David Abernathy and McDaniel Glen area. Down where Old Fulton County Turner Field used to be.
How much time have you spent working in that area?
I would say majority of the whole entire my career, 30 years.
Are you familiar with the Castleberry Hills area?
Yes, ma'am.
And how often have you worked in that area?
For my patrol, there's a Red Dog officer and responding as a burglary detective, robbery detective, and homicide detective.
330 McDaniel Street. What area is that in?
That is the Zone 1, Zone 5 area. It's like a border.
Okay. And when you say border, is it a border between different communities?
No, it's a border between the zones.
Okay. What communities make up that area?
It's both residential, apartment buildings, businesses.
And is 330 McDaniel Street in Fulton County?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Did you have an occasion to respond to that location on January 10th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
What time, if you recall, did you respond?
I believe I received the call around 9:30 p.m. from Detective Darren Smith of the Atlanta Police Homicide Unit. He advised me that there was 3 subjects shot at that location.
Are you called only when there is a confirmed death? Or are you called before you know whether or not someone has died?
It depends on the status of the paramedics when they transport. If they say the person is low critical, we respond because there's a good chance they might not survive when they get down to Grady.
When you responded on January 10th, 2015, did you have any confirmed deaths?
Not until I arrived on the scene.
What information or what were you responding to?
Responding to 3 subjects that were shot. One is low critical, one is in critical condition, one is in critical but stable condition.
And would you tell the jury what the names of those 3 subjects were?
Yes, ma'am. First subject that was in critical condition was Donovan Thomas. And I want to make sure I pronounce their names right. You might not look at my notes.
No, and if you, I'll hand you a copy of your report.
Yes, ma'am. Second subject that was in critical condition was Reginald Hendricks, and the third that was in critical but stable was Cardarius Sanders.
Now, did you have an opportunity when you arrived on scene to speak with either of those 3 people?
No, ma'am, they was already transported to Grady.
When you arrived on scene, had the scene already been cordoned off or roped off?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you arrived on scene, was there any other homicide detective already there assisting or directing?
Yes, ma'am. Detective Smith was on scene.
Now, was Detective Smith up in the rotation? Or
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
so when a detective is not up in rotation, how is it that one homicide detective would be working a scene before you, if it's your homicide?
Yes, ma'am. That depending on how many detectives are working that day. There's a lead detective that will go out to the scene, gather information, start processing, and they'll notify the next up homicide detective that there's a call and there's 3 subjects. Like on this day, 3 subjects that were shot.
How familiar with you were with the area of 330 McDaniel Street before you got that call on January 10th, 2015?
Very familiar.
Had you ever interacted with persons in that area on a casual basis as opposed to during an investigation?
Yes, ma'am, during the investigation.
And when you said during an investigation, is it only during investigations that you interacted with persons in that area?
Yes, ma'am. That's about, yes, ma'am.
Were there or was there an apartment complex in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember the name of the apartment complex?
But not the top of my head, no. I believe the one across the street, down the street was Castleberry Apartments.
Okay. Were you familiar with or had you had any occasion to visit or be familiar with Castleberry's apartments?
Yes, ma'am.
When you got on scene, did you make any efforts to locate surveillance footage?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the jury what efforts you took to locate surveillance footage.
Immediately that caught my attention was there was cameras fixed on the barbershop at 330 McDaniel Street. Also, I noticed that there were surveillance cameras down at the gas station at the intersection of McDaniel Street and Northside Drive.
Was it daytime, nighttime, something in the middle when you arrived on scene? I did not ask that question. Let me ask a better question. Was there daylight, moonlight, was there natural light for you to see on scene when you arrived there?
No, the street was lit up with city lights.
And how were you able to see the cameras that you were able to identify?
They were just fixed on the building so you can look up and see the cameras.
At the time that you saw them, did you know whether or not they were working?
No, I did not.
Did you take steps to find out?
Yes, I talked to the owners.
And when that happens, are you able to get the camera footage on scene immediately, or do you do something to get that footage?
Yes, ma'am. I contact the cyber crimes unit, who goes out and retrieve all type of video surveillance for us.
Detective Teague, are you familiar with Detective Teague?
Yes, ma'am.
And what does Detective Teague do for you during your investigation?
Detective T went to those different locations and downloaded the video surveillance from those locations. I gave him the dates and the times.
Did you, at the time, know whether there were, or did you learn if there were any?
Got my clothes out. I love each and every last one of y'all. Pray y'all watch the replay. I love each and every last one of y'all. Have a blessed day.
Facing McDaniel Street.
And what other efforts, if any, did you take to get surveillance footage or any kind of captured footage of what happened at 330 McDaniel Street?
It was just those two locations that had cameras.